What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Cats and Bolts, the Florida's #1 hockey podcast. I hope you're enjoying your day, and this is going to be a great show. 3, 2, 1.
I love it. Way to go, Benny boy. Ben Castro, the best producer of podcasts in Florida. And how coincidentally, he's probably the biggest reason this is Florida's favorite hockey show. Rod Peterson here with a special guest co-host. Nick Fairbanks joins us from the Locked On Panthers podcast here on Cats and Bolts. It's a very special edition, Nick, as you see. We're calling this Panthers Celebration. Back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. It's been over a week now since the Panthers knocked off the Edmonton Oilers in 6 games, and that's what we're going to talk about. And we got questions from the viewers. It's live on YouTube. We're live streaming here today. We want to hear from all the Cats fans. And the program is always brought to you by Beach House, Pompano, Boresco, and Cool Bet Canada. So let's get right into it here on Florida's favorite hockey podcast. Let's hear from the viewers. Let's get the live streaming comments coming in. Nick Fairbanks, have you stopped partying yet? You stopped partying just enough to come in and do the podcast. That's the sense that I'm getting.
Yeah, I had to take a week off of work to kind of come down from everything. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, tell me, listen, you've been how long in Florida out of Chicago? How long you been?
Actually, this will be 10 years, next month.
Okay, so you lived, like all these Panthers fans that I hear, you lived through the bad for sure. And you were never a Blackhawks fan, even though you're from Chicago. You're all in on the Panthers. You're from the Locked On Panthers podcast. You speak for the millions of Panthers fans. There was almost 500,000 of them on Fort Lauderdale Beach the other day that this is like the best times of your life, right?
Yeah, I would say probably about 500,000 at the parade, which is more than the 6 that we had last year. And on top of that, it's just amazing what's going on down here and that we're transforming this city into a hockey city.
Oh, yeah, a hockey region, there's no doubt. And I want to welcome everybody in. Joshua Dorr has showed up and says, "What's going on, Rod?" Well, okay, I'm going to go right into this. Joshua says, "I can see why Serena skipped this episode," our normal co-host. David Torres writes in and he says, Banksy. That's that your nickname, Nick? Banksy?
Yeah, in some circles, yes.
Okay. Well, we might as well get right down to it. That my first question was if you'd stop partying, and you're saying that you have. My second is why I wanted to do this specific show. Look, Serena, you all know that I'm going to have her back until the end of time, but last week's show wasn't exactly the way that I wanted it to go. I wanted it to be a Panthers celebration last week, but she's the Edmonton Oilers fan. We all know that, and she was very upset. I'm going to tell you something, Nick. You're not in Canada. None of you are in Canada. That's where I am for the summer, just so you all know. And Serena only reflects the opinion of Canadian hockey fans and the media. F the Panthers, F the Oilers. They're all mad at the Oilers that they didn't end the Canada drought, and they're all angry. And that all came out of Serena last week on this show. But I'm smart enough, not that she's not, but I'm smart enough to realize it's the Cats and Bolts podcast. I wanted to have a celebration for the Florida Panthers because that's who our viewers are, for the love of God. And that's what I wanted. But I don't know if you saw last week's show or not, Nick, but she spoke on behalf of a lot of Canadian hockey fans. It's not just her, but she was the one speaking. It was only the day after her Oilers loss. So, and it's been a lot of partying since, which is another point of mine. Man, we're knocking them off fast. Do you think the Panthers Stanley Cup celebrations have been over the line? What would you say?
I think for this group and exactly where they came from, I don't think so. Just because they've proven that they've been the best team in hockey the last 2 years and they should own it. Whereas past years, they've been probably a little bit more cautious not to, rock the boat too much. But, they've done only what 10 teams in the NHL have done, and that's win back-to-back Stanley Cups. So why not, go out and celebrate and, have Brad Marchand out there and trying to bring him back in. I think that's the whole sale right there.
Well, we're going to get to the viewer questions because I prefaced this and I saw that you were watching our Instagram feed. So
Yep.
You kind of know what the questions are coming from our viewers here. But I'm going to read a few of the viewer comments already. Kelly Francis writes in. She says, "I was so happy you had another show this season. So thank you, because this will stand all summer and into next fall as our last show of the season, celebrating back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers." The Big C's has checked in. Cesar Lucero, the star, the most famous Panthers fan. Biz called him that. He's the biggest, ironically not, Panthers fan. Caesar, knows what we're talking about. He says, maybe we can have me on one-on-one these days. Thanks, everyone, for the love and support. Love you all. I've asked C's, and he knows to come on multiple times, but he's always working at this time of the day. So C's is writing in from work, the most famous Panther fan. And Joshua Outdoor says, Big C's, a legend in the chat. Now, I'll just say this, because I had a buddy, he's probably watching right now, Chris from the Bronx, who lives in Deerfield Beach. And he goes, Rod, you're the only one in South Florida that'll say the Panthers went over the line. And I don't care about the drinking. I don't care about the swearing. I don't care about the long hours. But the F the Oilers, I didn't like that. And I saw Marchand wearing a logo. You probably saw it that had the Oilers logo, but it said losers. And that's just not the way I roll. And it's not the way I roll. Okay? Because I don't think the Oilers, and I've been digging into this, because again, I'm in Canada. I've been asking Oilers fans, did the Oilers do anything to trigger this trolling and disdain and vitriol from the Panthers? Because I don't need to go any further than that, other than to say, if they went over the line, the hockey gods will get them with karma. If they went over the line, the hockey gods will get them. I don't have to vote on whether they went over the line or not, or you. The hockey gods will. And I just don't think they needed to troll the Oilers. Playing Pink Pony Club from the speakers at the parade on Sunday. Like, why? That's all. That's all I have on that.
Yeah, I mean, let's be up front here, though. These teams are rivals now. I mean, they've met in the Cup twice. You know, there's been some bad blood. They even mentioned it, that there's a lot of chirps on the ice that probably went way past than just normal chirps. So you could probably say that there is some real feelings out there, and maybe the Panthers took this one more personally. I mean, not only the fact that they blew a 3-0 lead last year to eventually win, but I think they wanted to make a statement saying that, this last year wasn't a fluke and that they can still get the job done. And now they're kind of just brushing off that extra, what's the word I'm looking for here? Extra macho, I'll say, that gusto. So
machismo,
correct.
I think is the term. Yeah. But again, it's all fun. Do what you want. When I saw the way they were partying, which nobody partied more than me, I'm in the Hall of Fame of partying. Trust me, I'm not going to be looking down my nose at anybody. But I was like, they are taking to a whole new level that when you win, you can do whatever you want. And that's true. That's a good message to kids. Winning matters, because when you do, you can do whatever you want. And I'll say it one more time. Like, I'm with you. There must have been something happened that we don't know. Because you're right. There seems to be a hell of a lot of hatred there from the Panthers towards the Oilers, and maybe it's the other way. Well, now it definitely would be. I mean, they all hate Matthew Tkachuk, but that's to be expected. Now, from the audience, from
a lot of comments.
A lot of comments. From You Read This Wrong says, Miami gang, that parade in Broward was super. David Torres says, F the Oilers, started from the fans, not the team. What's the team supposed to do? I don't know about that. I just saw a clip. Listen, it's still going around in Canada, dude. Like, it's hockey year-round here, just like it is football where you guys are in South Florida. And I just saw the clip of A.J. Greer leaning over the rail at the elbow room. From the video that I saw, and I don't care. By the way, I want to move on from this because I don't want to get bogged down in that. From You Read This Wrong says, Tkachuk around and find out. Hashtag Go Gatos. Yes, you brought up about how good this Panthers team is, and that's my third point. I guess the Panthers proved that they are indeed, this team's better than last year's team. Because as you know, that was a conversation coming up around South Florida over the last few months, right? When I was there, is this team better than last? And I'm like, if they don't win the Stanley Cup, they won't be. But I think, Nick, what we've seen here over the last 2 months is they're not only better, they're markedly better than the 23-24 Florida Panthers. And
that's a huge mountain that they had to climb to even be considered in that conversation, because you look at the players that they lost last year. You look at Ryan Lomberg, you look at Kevin Stenlund, who I was a big fan of, for that fourth line. You lose Brandon Montour. I mean, who thought that this team would be able to fill the holes that they did even better and even win the cup again the way that they did? So who knows, going into this offseason, they have to retool again, obviously. Are they going to be better than this year? I honestly don't know. I'm not going to try and, guess at that. But you have to trust Bill Zito and what he's going to be able to do.
Oh, my God. I was speaking to an agent this morning. about just that. The agent, an NHL agent, who said, how about that? You lose Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Montour, and you get better. And now, by the way, they say, I said, did you know Bill Zito from his agent days? And he goes, oh, yeah, great guy. Great guy. That's very evident. While I'm tagging you, Nick, in Twitter, what's the deal on your Twitter account? Like, it looks like Prudential. Did you work at Prudential for a while, or what's with your Twitter handle?
It's Prudentia Zero. So Prudentia in Latin means like forward seeing. So you're always kind of like looking for the next thing, or always trying to, be wise to certain situations. So I kind of do that with hockey, and then also I try to do that in my personal life.
Okay, gotcha. Love it. JC checks in from Dallas, says, hope y'all are well. Oh, we're fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're so good. It's called the Panthers Celebration episode, so how could it not be? You don't very rarely see me in a hat, so it's a very special occasion. From Bill from the Florida Panthers Den podcast, he writes in, he says, if the Panthers had not blown leads in games 1 and 4, they would have swept the Oilers. Yes, and if my aunt had nuts, she'd be my uncle. It didn't happen. They took their eye off the puck. And what they realized, Nick, was that they're not playing the Leafs. No. They're not playing Carolina. They're playing a damn good hockey team. And that, to be honest, back to Serena's comments last week, all of Canada really was cheering for Edmonton. And Edmonton, I wouldn't, to say they didn't show up would be an insult to the Oilers, but they didn't play anywhere near their best. Serena was right in that. Right? They didn't. And that, do you credit the Panthers for, like, not giving them the ability? I'm not sure yet. It doesn't really matter. That's something for the Oilers to worry about.
So I have 2 points on this one, because I was thinking about it as we're kind of rolling through the questions, that you had up. I think the first thing is that I don't think they had enough depth as they had last year. I mean, you look at the who they lost, like Broberg and Holloway. Those would have been 2 great pieces to have on this team still for a cup run. And then, I do think it was the Panthers, after probably the first or second game, really figuring out exactly what they need to do to defend and make sure that, McDavid is well defended. He's not getting anywhere. Draisaitl's not getting anywhere. And then let the depth of that Edmonton team try to do all the work for them. And unfortunately, just this year, they were a non-factor.
We went through the checklist before the series, and coming out of the series, the Panthers out-goaltended them, they out-coached them, they out-blue-lined them, and they out-forwarded them. And they also out-X-factored them, whatever that is. They did whip their ass from pillar to post. And I think that's what they're so mad about up in Edmonton, was they were hardly in that series at all. The Panthers beat them in every facet. And for that reason, it's very clear that this is a better Panthers team this year than the one last year. Write the clip. Yeah. Write the clip down, Ben. That's the one. Okay, go, Nick.
No, I was going to say 100% agree, and I wouldn't be surprised. That's why people are mad up in Edmonton. I mean, you probably expected more out of your team. It's a rematch. You should have this revenge, this feeling that, hey, I want to get back. I want to win the cup. I want to win the cup over a team in South Florida where, maybe hockey shouldn't exist. And from here, where do the Edmonton Oilers go? I mean, they already made a move today. That's a move they had to make, but where do they go from here? Where's the goaltending going? Are they going to fill up their bottom 6? Are they going to get another top 6? Like, what is going on with them now? I mean, there's a lot more questions going on with Edmonton going into the offseason now, in my belief, than Florida Panthers. So there's always this idea of like unknowing and having that fear of what the unknown is.
We're going to delve into the viewer questions in a moment. But David writes in, and I'm just, by the way, David Torres is a friend of yours? Is that the sense that I'm getting?
Yeah, I've interacted with him a few times.
Okay, cool. He says, when the entire hockey media sphere is seemingly rooting against you / for McDry, best on the planet, etc., maybe you kind of take that to heart. For reference, what would have happened if McDavid had 4 in the clincher? I'm going to not get upset by everybody else's perspective. I think it's the one thing that a lot of people need to realize. Everybody has an opinion. We're not all going to agree. And I was in Canada for the series, watching it on Sportsnet. They were outright openly cheering for the Oilers, no doubt. What a shock the Canadian TV channel would cheer for the Canadian team. And as far as the NHL on TNT goes, I didn't see any bias. All I hear is this they hate the Panthers. I hope at some point the Panthers fan base gets over this. You mentioned hockey should hockey not be played in Florida? I know you didn't mean that.
Correct.
But at what point you didn't mean it that way?
Correct. Yeah.
When are we getting over this? When are we getting over it? Because I'm tired of it. It's been 5 seasons I've been covering the team, 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, 2 cup wins. Can we drop it? It's a hockey market now.
I would hope so. I just think that, there's an old adage of thinking that, hockey needs to be played up in the north where there's snow, there's ice. It's just, we can't grow the game further than that. And I think, one of the things that I will give Gary Bettman credit for is he stuck with it. He was moving franchises or actually opening up franchises in the South. And, Tampa Bay has been very successful. I'll give them, hats off and kudos to them. But now you have Florida, who's been very good. You have Dallas, who's on the cusp of hopefully doing something. You have Carolina, who's always good. So things are working, and, the game is growing, and that's what you should want for this league, not to have it, gate checked at north of the border, or even the northern teams or the original 6. So that's all.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm entitled to an opinion just as much as Serena is, or you are, or David, or anybody. And what right does Canada have, even though Hockey Canada's slogan for the longest time was, "It's our game"? Mm-hmm. I remember I was the voice of Team Canada, for the love of God, on Sportsnet. I was the voice of Team Canada going, this is very non-inclusive and somewhat arrogant. You're putting a target on our back by saying that. I'm now the guy that loves the hockey's for everyone. Yep. Because it is. And, we had the coach of FAU hockey, men's hockey, Chris Long, come into the program, and he's got plans for this show and the Owls moving forward in the fall and live shows from bars. And hockey's growing, man. So to say that it doesn't belong in Florida, I just got to bring it down. It belongs to wherever people want it. Okay, my last one. This came up from David, Panthers fan in Utah, who watches this show. He's originally from Fort Lauderdale. He watches this show every week, and he just randomly threw out that the Matthew Tkachuk trade from the Flames 3 summers ago is the greatest trade in NHL history. And I was immediately like, oh, just hang on. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Maybe it was. Mm-hmm. And I've been kicking it around since with hockey fans here, hockey people, and they're like, it's top 3. And I don't mean to lob that at you and catch you off guard, but, dude, I can't think of many.
No. Even the Gretzky trade to LA, and I don't mean to say that, I know Serena's not here, but I wouldn't even probably put that in a top 3 trade just because what Edmonton got back. But from a culture standpoint, from what it does for a franchise and what they've been able to do afterwards, you have to say that it's at least top 1 or 2, and it's still going. Results matter. And when you bring somebody like that in, and that's the trajectory that the franchise takes, there's no way you can say that there's another trade that probably has been even more impactful to a franchise like this.
Yeah, it was funny because David sent me a list of the biggest trades of all time. Mm-hmm. And number 1 was the Gretzky trade. And I'm like, yeah, we all know that, August 9th, 1988. I don't need to look that up. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest trade. But guess what? So the Oilers won a Stanley Cup 2 years later, but Gretzky himself said they'd have won 4 more had he stayed in Edmonton. Yep. And the LA never did win at all. Mm-hmm. So who won that? They both lost, actually. It was the biggest trade, but it wasn't the best trade. What they are saying on the Brad Marchand trade deadline deal, when there was media saying it was the greatest trade deadline deal ever, Brad Marchand, people are saying, no, it was Butch Goring in 1979. The Islanders got him, and they went on to win 4 Stanley Cups. And I'm like, okay, fair. I didn't even have hair on my peaches at the time, so I can't speak to that. I don't even think you were born. But that's fair if that's the biggest trade deadline deal ever. But here's the other thing with Tkachuk. The story's not done yet.
Nope.
They could win 3 or 4 in a row. And they're positioned for that. Because if you saw the clip from Spit and Chicklets, Ryan Whitney's on there going, I can't wait for the downfall of the Panthers. Because he's an Oilers fan, right? But he goes, and it may not be for a few years. That's the one thing. The Panthers are going to be good for a long time.
Bill Zito's done a masterful job in not only acquiring players, but throwing first-rounders to show that, hey, these guys are more valuable to this team now, and if we can sign them to a contract and build this core around these guys, this team's window is now open, I would probably say, for another 4 or 5 seasons. It really depends on how he's going to, navigate the cap, because there's going to be some changes coming to that, especially when it comes to the playoffs. But you can't. I don't think you can really say that the Panthers, I guess, like, their stories it's going to be over. I think they have until 2030. They have this window, like we were just talking about, and every year that Tkachuk's been here, they've been to the Stanley Cup final. Now, is that going to continue? History probably says no. I mean, it's very hard to get there, but to say that they're always going to be in the fight, you got to give them that. Every single year they're going to be in it.
I could see them winning for sure 3 Stanley Cups, maybe 4. Ekblad said at the news conference the other day, was it at the wherever it was? Yeah, it was. Last Saturday. He was like, we're on an upwards trajectory, which we'll get on to the viewer comments now. You and I could go on for this forever. By the way, Bill from the Florida Panthers Den podcast says that his number 1 trade was the Penguins acquiring Ron Francis, and that's a good one. They went on to win back-to-back Stanley Cups in 91 and 92. Okay, to the viewers, I'll make this as fast as I can. This is right out of the chute. Gordon writes in, he says, can the Panthers keep all 3, Bennett, Ekblad, and Marchand? Well, what I hate about this time of year in Canada is the insiders are all yelling all over each other about I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, and I hate that conjecture and talk. Let's go to the source. Bill Zito on the ice after Game 6 on Sportsnet was asked that question. He goes, I think we'll find a way to keep all 3. And the reporter, Nick, goes, by them taking hometown discounts? And Bill looked at him with the way Bill looks. He goes, let's just leave it at that. Because I know everybody wants to play armchair general manager and what I call salary Tetris, fitting in all the let Bill do his job, because if those guys want to stay, they'll stay. Now, having said that, this shocked me a little bit, but I'm in Canada where the hockey people are, and a source close to Joel Quenneville told me that the Ducks coach would like to get Ekblad to Anaheim, and I kind of wonder if Aaron, even though I really think he wants to finish his career in Florida, might want to say, hey, what's life like in the West Conference? What's life like on the West Coast? You know what I mean? I don't know.
That's actually a really good call out by you. And, as soon as you put that out there, it makes a ton of sense. Quenneville needs somebody on the blue line who he can trust, and also who had probably his best season before getting injured under Quenneville. So I think there's a couple of things that match up there. But, getting back to what Zito said, we'll just leave it at that. Of course, he's negotiating with these 3 players right now, and he's not going to let anything out, because guess what? If they do take hometown discounts, then that could affect the market for other players. And Bill's smart enough to know that if it does affect other players on the market, then, that could affect him in the long run as well. So I think he's being smart, being very coy about it, and we probably won't hear anything probably for the next, the 25th today? Probably for the next week, to be honest. I mean, kind of like the Reinhardt deal.
Joshua Dorr says Zito said it on the Joe Rose show today as well, 560 WQAM. So let's put it this way, Nick. Most GMs would go, oh, I don't know. This is very bold of Bill Zito to go, yeah, I think we can get it done. So they're having the talks. And what it's going to come down to is if those players want to stay, they'll get it done. Why would you not want all 3 if you're the Panthers? Right?
No, yeah. You want all 3. I mean, listen, you just won a cup with 2 of them, and now you have a third one that made your team even better, and now is being arguably one of the best, trade deadline trades or acquisitions. And you made your third line almost a first line that would be on any team, going into the playoffs. So, yeah, I think you would have interest in bringing all 3 back. No question.
David Torres says Ekblad is seeing what life is like in the Bahamas right now. I agree with Rod. Ekblad to Anaheim does make sense. Gudas Truba is a friend. Yeah, Doug Steeman. And he goes, how much money, Rod? That I don't know, but what I do know, having talked with Panthers people, is that if Ekblad were to stay in Florida, he'd have to take a pay cut anyway.
100%.
Right? So he could be going to Anaheim for less money, certainly, than he's making now. Okay, moving on. Stacy writes in, she says, do we keep Vitek Vanacek as he's a free agent? Did Vanacek even unpack? He was acquired, at the trade deadline, right, from San Jose? I mean, he's I hate to say this, but everybody that watches the show knows not only am I a goalie guy, I'm a former goalie. Mm-hmm. A backup like Vitek Vanacek is like a Lomberg, like a Nick Cousins. They're not the key. They're not the core. So they could get any backup in there. I'm sorry. So if Vanacek wants to leave, he'll leave. He'll go sign somewhere for the most money. He barely played. And as a matter of fact, the one game that I remember him starting was in Washington when he got shelled. It's like 5-1 after the first period. So no, I don't. I'm not all in on signing Vitek Vanacek.
No, his best game was his first game where he got a shutout, and the team played glorious in front of him just to make him feel welcome. After that, you could see that, oh man, we might have to throw in Bob a little bit more here just because, Vanacek wasn't getting it done. So, no, to me, he can walk, and I think they can either bring somebody up, from the A or even from, where they have, all the minor people, or, there might be other goalies out there that they can bring in cheaper as well.
I saw the list this morning. I mean, Nick, how much time have you spent in Canada? By the way,
None.
Okay, none. Okay, well, TSN. Imagine this, because I've spoken now to so many Florida and U.S. hockey fans that they think of Canada of this like Narnia, where it's like hockey 24/7 and the TV networks. That's exactly what it is. If you love hockey, Canada's the place for you. Just not in the winter. But this morning they had the top 10 free agents entering free agency next week. Jake Allen was the best goalie out of everybody, and so I have not been a Jake Allen fan ever. So it doesn't matter. The only reason the backup is there to give Bob a break to catch his breath, which since I guess we'll kind of go out of order here. Jonathan writes in and says, what's the actual plan for life after Bob? Is it Vanacek? Well, I don't, I as God is my witness, don't think they have a plan for after Bob, because I think Bob, look, he's playing the best hockey of his life. Back-to-back Stanley Cups at the age of 37. Let's remember Tom Brady playing to 45. Aaron Rodgers playing, what is he now, 41? Sidney Crosby just signed a new deal and he's 38. Like, it's not like it used to be. Bob is going to be physically in peak condition. Mentally, he clearly is. Like, the one thing with Bob I love, he reminds me of Carey Price back in the day. When Bob gets it in his mind, he's not letting in a goal, you're not scoring.
No.
Done.
And he's proven it.
Yeah. So I want to say 4 years, probably, before they really need to not look at it. They'll be thinking about it before then, but I don't think you have a new starter for 4 years.
No. And that's why I think right now they have to draft, or they have to bring in somebody who's young enough to learn and eventually take over. But right now, what's the number one thing on Bill Zito's mind? Winning another cup. So who gives you the best chance to do that? And that's got to be Bob. It's not going to be anybody else at this time.
Yeah, and I don't think they wanted to part with Spencer Knight. After all, they invested in him. They drafted him before they even signed Bob. I think they love Spencer Knight. But I also know in a trade, you need to give up something to get something. They really wanted Seth Jones, and Chicago really wanted a starter, probably a starting goaltender. So he's the future in Chicago. And if they're fine in goal with Roberto Luongo, kind of knows what he's doing.
No, and that's why they gave up Levy as well for Sam Reinhart. I mean, they saw the possible potential, but his stock was so high at that time that it made sense. But I am going to push back a little bit on Knight. I do think that they really liked him and that he had shown that he is capable of it. But from what I know is that I think right after he went into the player assistance program, and hopefully he's cleared out and he's good with everything now, I think Florida was looking to possibly trade him, and they weren't getting any deals that they viewed as, what they thought would be equitable. And all of a sudden, you have Seth Jones that's sitting there that clearly wants out, and, you give them their number one goaltender, and you get a defenseman who will fit right in and learn the system. And he played a hell of a playoff series, or playoff, rounds.
Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a topic for another day. No, in that, did the Panthers know that Aaron Ekblad had the 20-game suspension coming? Because they acquired Seth Jones a week before it was announced, right? True. And the Panthers swear, and Panthers people have told me that was not the case. It was a fluke or a coincidence. Either way, it's clearly worked out for everybody. And by the way, I'm just supposing on the Spencer Knight thing. I'm just supposing that. So you may very well be right with what you said. But I don't give up on people. That's not saying the Panthers do. But I think Chicago's getting the best Spencer Knight, and thank you, Florida, for prepping the kid.
Correct.
Now showing up in Chicago now because God knows they need a goalie and everything else. Taz writes in and says, can you detail the impact of the fourth line? Yeah, I was sitting there watching the games with my buddy Brent from Wellington, Florida, and going, I can't believe how much they're playing the fourth line. Whoever it was that night. Sometimes it was Nico Sturm, sometimes it was Gadjevich, sometimes it was AJ Greer, but especially in the Tampa series, that was one that really stood out for me. But that's trust. That's Paul. They certainly weren't the most effective line, but what they did was very important.
Well, they did exactly what Paul Maurice wanted. They, I think, were the most consistent team to get the puck deep and get on the forecheck and hit somebody. So, yeah, I mean, you go against Toronto, you're in 0-2 hole, and you're down 3-1. I mean, you're making that lineup change. Really, is it the fourth line that was the problem in that series? Well, apparently, whatever they did changed the complexity of that series. And from then on, that team or that line basically brought them or helped carry them to where they got to in the Stanley Cup final. I honestly, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Greer, Gadjevich, and Nosek was going to be the line that kind of turns your playoff season around, I would have said you're out to lunch on that one.
But they all did. And by the way, I've been watching Nosek since the Vegas days because I was a Golden Knights fan. I quite often purport that I don't have a team, but for a while I was a Golden Knights fan because I was looking for a new team. And so when they came in, I'm like, oh, this fits well. And Nate Schmidt was there too. Those are two tremendous hockey players. I was very, very happy for them. But you got the top line, let's just say Barkov and Reinhart and whoever's with them at the time, Verhaeghe. The second line, Bennett, Marchand, and whoever's with them at the time. And then the third line, Luosterainen and Lundell, to me, was the most impressive. They were all great. But Lundy has become a household name to the degree that Matthew Tkachuk's trying to set him up with South Florida starlets, and stuff. And Luosterainen, he's built like a toothbrush. Right? But he's incredibly effective and took a 5-minute major and got kicked out of a game. They all contributed very evenly.
Well, I'm glad that Lundell's finally getting his flowers because, he's like Barkov in a way. I feel like in the league he's very underrated. And over the last 3 postseasons, I mean, they've won awards in every single year that he's been on the team. They won the President's Trophy. They made the Stanley Cup final. They won the Eastern Conference, and they won the last 2 Stanley Cups. So, Summer Rae, maybe check this guy out a little bit. But I think it is the identity that this team really is and that they all buy in. I mean, if Luosterainen could, as you say, look like a toothbrush, well, he may be the harder brushed version of that now, and he has like the little gum pick there that just shows a little bit more grit than what he was used to. But guess what? It works.
Benny boy, are you awake? Wiki. How are we doing on time, my guy? Is Ben still there? Because I can't see him.
We're doing great on time. We're at 35 minutes right now.
Okay, we won't stay too long. This is our evergreen show. It's going to last all summer and into the fall for everybody, and I appreciate you, Nick, coming in. It's been great. Some more viewer questions. Joshua, who's watching right now, says, will the CBA, the new CBA, collective bargaining agreement, change the long-term injured reserve / playoff cap rule? Well, it'll change around the same time this stupid state income tax discussion dies, because in both cases, the NHL has said, we've talked about it and we've seen no reason to make a change. Just start with the LTIR thing. Tampa used it to their advantage. Vegas used it to their advantage. I think we all still think Florida used it to their advantage. The Oilers apparently used it to their advantage with Evander Kane. Were being investigated for that.
Yep.
But maybe it's just lip service by the NHL head office, but we can't look back over 30 years and see any instances of Gary Bettman lying. Not that I know, nothing documented. They don't seem to think that this is as big an issue as the whining teams that can't seem to find out loopholes, figure out to go win a championship.
So I have 2 points about this. Number one, the Blackhawks did it back when they were, very good. I can't remember the exact trade, but I think it was Kane that was out. He actually got injured by a Panther player, and I was at that game. Alexander Petrovic, however he wants to say his name nowadays. And then they were able to go get a couple players. Now, what you're saying is an NBA-esque, like, hey, we're going to go out and get the best players to make our team better. Why don't fans want to see that? Why don't fans want to see the best players play the hardest sport and to win the hardest championship? I mean, to Bettman's point, there really is no issue, but I can understand where there are some teams that are just fighting to get in that, hey, like, we could use a little help here. Maybe the taxes are an issue, which, come on. Like, we know it's not, and nobody was coming to Florida 20 years ago when it was not a non-issue.
No, it's funny that Matt Caldwell, the Panthers president, at the parade called out Paul Bissonnette, who's leading the charge on this state income tax thing, and called him biz idiot. And Bettman shut him down too. I was watching that intermission.
Beautiful.
Like, bit his ass, like right. And it was kind of funny. And Biz was like, "Can you do something to help the Leafs then?" And because that's all you care about is the Leafs, Biz. But whatever. To footnote on that, Joshua says, "I've read that it's expected to change. You can have players over the cap, but your lineup needs to be at the cap." Well, I'll say this. I don't listen to much of what I read, but what I will say is the guys that you need to listen to for NHL coverage are Pierre LeBrun with The Athletic and TSN, and Elliot Friedman and Darren Dreger. Those are like the three. If it's coming out of their mouth or their keyboard, I got time. And really nobody else.
The Holy Trinity.
Yeah, that's it. That's the trifecta right there. Because for reasons I don't want to get into, but they just have a pipeline to Gary Bettman. So it's like whatever Gary Bettman wants out, he goes through those guys. It's not a lie, but it's what. So they're managing the message, but it's true. Those are the guys that I listen to. I'm giving them bouquets here. Jonathan writes in, he says, "I don't know if the question was asked, but where can we find that hat Nick is wearing?"
Basically, there's a guy on Twitter, Florida Historian or Historian Florida. Sorry if I botched that, but no, he's a really good guy. He's got a store on his X link, and you guys can find it there.
Isn't he Panthers Historian?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Florida Panthers Den says, "The hockey trifecta." I feel like we've born something here. We need to get halos for these three. I can see the memes. Pierre LeBrun, Darren Dreger, and Elliot Friedman, all personal friends of mine, all great guys. That's who I go to for my info, and I don't listen to anybody else. And, we've covered everybody's questions. Some guys have asked more than one question, but I think we don't owe anybody anything here, my guy, Nick. Any last words from you on this wonderful Panthers season?
Just bask in it, Florida fans. Never would I thought that we'd be celebrating something like this after what we've all gone through as fans. And to the newer fans here, please enjoy the fan. Let us come to one with this.
Yeah.
And then finally, Rod, thank you for having me on this season. It's been a pleasure, and hope we can do some more in the future.
Well, we'd better. We'd better. Well, I love that you were prepared for me to ask you for final words. That's great. You handled it very eloquently. Now over to our producer, Ben, the illustrious producer to the stars, Benjamin Castro, the producer of Florida's favorite hockey show, joining us. He's got his team uniform on today. Don't let me down, Ben. You got the camera ready, I hope.
Oh, you knew it, Rod.
I know.
I'm here. I'm ready. Got my cats and bolts.
I was paying attention. Well, listen. Tell the people again. Nick might not have seen it. You were recognized on the concourse with the shirt at a Panthers game with the Cats and Bolts podcast. I never get tired of that.
Yeah, no, I was walking around and someone sees, because I knew when I went to the show, I was like, or to see the Panthers play, I was like, I gotta wear at least something. And someone, first 5 minutes I walk in, they're like, "Hey, I know you. And you're for the Cats and Bolts." And so it was pretty cool. And then what was Muscle Man? Or what was the guy that your friend?
Rob Vegley, a Panther Muscle fan.
Yeah, Muscle fan. He's like, "Oh, you're on the show." And I was like, yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Literally every Panthers game, somebody says something, and the odd Lightning game, people say stuff too. So, Kelly Francis says, "Yes, we need merch." Oh, yeah, there's something for me to work on over the summertime. David says, "Thanks, guys. Flew back for the parade. It was incredible." From Bill from the Florida Panthers Den podcast says, "I enjoy this big time. Great podcast, guys." I thank everybody who showed up. Thanks to everybody for making it Florida's most watched hockey podcast. We clearly would be nothing without you. Thank you to our sponsors, Beach House Pompano, Boresco, Cool Bet Canada, all the guests for the last 2 seasons that have come in. Those Panthers greats, and we'll be working on Lightning greats as well as we move forward. It's just so darn much fun. Enjoy it, everybody, and we will see you next fall here on the Cats and Bolts podcast.